Well, finally starting this process. I don't know what I'm doing. And now the video's over for some reason. I'm an old, and this process is really confusing. But I was inspired today to finally get off my duff and record a video. Well, I'm not sure how that worked out. And it's very confusing because the photos only lasted a few seconds. So hopefully I'll get used to this process. But what struck me when I have lots of things I plan to talk about, but I've been thinking a lot about Severance and everything that's going on in the world today. I think that's why I don't remember hearing as much about Severance the first season. I watched it as it came out, but I don't remember there being as many people talking about it or articles coming out about it. But this season there seems to be a lot more excitement, and I think that's obviously because of everything that's happening in the country and people becoming more stressed about jobs, whereas 2020 to 2022, when the first season was being made and came out, things were better and jobs were plentiful, and you were watching things about overemployment and people having 2, 3, 5, 10 jobs. And now it's not only people struggling to get jobs. Like I have a friend that's an attorney who's sorry, my TV started playing an ad automatically in the background. She's been looking for a job for over 2 years, and she's an attorney. I've been looking for over 2 years, but I hadn't worked in a long time. So I was really hopeful when I started 2 years ago, and now after 2 years of on and off looking and being interrupted with illnesses and other things, and now I was already losing hope, and then people that were employed are losing their jobs left and right because of all these government cuts for so-called efficiency. It's super efficient to fire people and then rehire them because you didn't realize they were keeping the world from getting nuked or I don't know, running things that were vital for survival. Anyway, so I think that maybe that further alienation and fraughtness about work that's heightened has brought the show more to the forefront. And so I've been really enjoying like theory videos about Severance, but one thing I haven't heard anyone talk about, and I'm not saying I watch every theory video because I mostly watch feminist videos, but I haven't heard anyone talk about the campus of Lumen. Looks like a brain, and the building is almost in the spot where they put in the Severance device, chip, whatever it's called. And I haven't heard anyone talk about this. I don't know if I'm just not watching the right theory videos or what. And so what this took me back to was Westworld. When I think it's got to be the bicameral mind episode, because he's talking about the bicameral mind. And Anthony Hopkins' character is pointing out to Dolores, trying to get her to reach consciousness, and he's points to the painting of Michelangelo's that's behind his desk, and says something like, I just rewatched the clip. He says like, it took 500 years for people to notice that the background behind the God that's reaching towards man to connect with, he's like on a brain, and no one realized it. Probably because wasn't Michelangelo one of those people that was like dissecting people so he could, draw and paint the body better. I think Da Vinci was doing that. Anyway, this video is going to be imperfect, man. I'm not claiming to be an expert on anything, but it's just weird that I haven't seen anyone draw that connection. Maybe I'm just not finding the right people because I don't watch as many theory videos like when I was watching Game of Thrones. I was just theory videos all the time. still follow probably a ton of theory channels that basically died when Game of Thrones ended, and they've tried to rebrand. Like, one's reading the books, and others have tried to follow like Westworld or other shit. Then Westworld went off the air prematurely, and so a lot of those channels just kind of floundered, and I kind of miss that. I miss that deep dive, and Severance is that kind of show you can take that deep dive into. So this isn't even a deep dive; it's a shallow dive, and it's just weird that I haven't heard anyone else talk about this. It's not super deep or profound. It's just that I haven't seen it anywhere. I'm loving the show. I actually just rewatched the previous, I guess it's 18 episodes. I think there were 9 the first season. So then I watched 1 through 9 from the current season, and you notice all these other little details later that are just, again, like Westworld and Game of Thrones, little details in there, so specific and well planned, and you have to give them credit for it. It's amazing. And so I'm about to watch the season 2 finale. I am excited, but I just wanted to record something before that, because it's like, who knows what I'll think after watching it, right? It'll change everything that I see and think and feel about it. But I'm just loving it, because my whole work history has been very fraught, especially being unemployed for most of the last 20 years and just not being able to find a job. And as the gap has grown, still, it's just gotten worse that I haven't been able to find work. And it's hard to be motivated to keep looking so there's times where I didn't look and went back to school to have something to do with my brain, and try to have something new on my resume. So maybe then I would find work. And then, of course, it's backfired, because now that women are more educated, and in particular Black women being the most educated group in this country, suddenly in the last few years, education has been derided. And Ivy League education in particular, which was the gold standard, that, you could write your own ticket, right? That in particular has been targeted by this administration. So what a weird time to be alive, where we are marching headlong into things that I've either only read about in history books or theorized on about on TV shows, and somehow is happening in America, where my greatest fear that in World War III we would be the Nazis it's starting to look like it's going to come true. Alienating all of our allies, bringing back segregation, rolling back women's rights, gay rights, trans rights, and people cheering for it because they were so persecuted under Joe Biden, and they can never name a specific thing that they were persecuted. They couldn't say racist crap or sexist crap or transphobic stuff without being called out, without having repercussions for their actions. They weren't thrown in prison for their speech, although I fear that's going to be something that happens soon, and we're all putting all our speech on the internet. Now I'm joining in. It's a terrifying time, and I am terrified because I belong to lots of groups that are and will be targeted. And I just want to live my life, have a decent home and job and life balance, wrapping it back up to Severance, and have a decent life. And it's bizarre. This guy that I asked about his town a couple months ago, I found a house that I liked in his town that was really inexpensive, and I'm priced out of all the places I've lived in the past because they're all big cities: New York, LA, San Francisco. I'm from LA. I lived in New York for 10 years. I lived in San Francisco for 3.5 years, and they were cheap in the 90s when I moved there, and it was doable as a young person. Sometimes I had to work a second job to get by and be able to visit home or buy presents for my younger brother for birthdays and holidays. But I could do it, right? It was doable. And Now I don't know how young people do that stuff, have the adventures that I did. And yeah, I'm not saying it was easy, but we know, when you're young, you have much more energy, and working 2 jobs is no big deal, and especially if you don't have to work 2 jobs year round. Like I worked at Williams-Sonoma at Christmas in San Francisco. I worked one summer at an online service, like a customer service job, in addition to my full-time job. It was totally doable, and it just gave me that little bit of cushion. But I always had enough. Even without that, I always had enough for my basics. It was usually just to have extras, that I would take a second job or a part-time job or a holiday job or whatever. And now I don't know how young people do half of the things that I was able to do, because my rent was, I think $375 when I moved to San Francisco, and $550 when I moved into my own apartment in San Francisco a year later, and $600-700. I think the most I paid in New York was $1,000, and that was with utilities and 2 meals a day at a hotel for women in the West Village, living like my dreams. And now I see shares that are $1,000 where you're sharing a bathroom in a house with strangers. I can't even imagine. And that's in the suburbs. It's not even in LA. I'm outside of LA. So what a weird time. I'm really grateful for so many of my adventures, but I think it's just interesting the show comes now at a time where people seemed to be doing well. I was seeing so many more people making 6 figures and having money. You were seeing, again, Black women and women being able to live on one salary and live well and have a good life and travel and save and invest and buy homes. And now it's like people are wondering if they're going to be able to pay their bills in a month, because is their job going to be eliminated? Is something that funds the nonprofit that they work for, or is that nonprofit going to lose their funding? Is their government job no longer secure? It's a terrifying time. And I'm old. I digress. I never finished the story about the guy in the small town, so I contacted him and reached out to him about the town, and I'm looking for towns that have some diversity, because a lot of times I'll find I'm addicted to cheap old houses, and there will be really gorgeous cheap houses, and lots of them are in Mississippi and Alabama. Alabama is where my ancestors were slaves, so I don't think that's the good choice for me. So I'm trying to find some sort of balance of diverse. In a blue state that has state-sponsored health insurance in case the ACA is repealed, but also realizing I may end up in a red county in a blue state. So I'm looking for certain things that I need to live, like I'm getting older, I'm in my 50s, so I need a decent hospital. A college town would be good because it's going to tend to be a little more progressive. I think my minimum for Black population is 10%, and minimum diversity is like 15 or 20. That'd be nice, because I'll see a very gorgeous house and it's in New York State, and I think great, and then it's perfect, it's less than $100,000. Oh, it's a duplex, I could rent out half and that would pay the mortgage, great. And I check the demographics and it's like 99.3% white, and I'm like, if it's that white, there's a reason. That's by design. That's not just, you're not going to be fine moving there. No, that's on purpose. That might be a sundown town still today. Anyway, so I was talking to this guy about his town and asking about it, and he said they've lost a lot of their industries. It's in Illinois. There's a lot of good houses in small towns in Illinois, but they're also similar to Rust Belt towns where they've lost their major employers. So whereas traditionally they had 4 or 5 large employers. Now they may have 1 or 2. So his town was down to 1 major manufacturer, and then I think a couple hospitals. And so, I asked about race because, of course, when you look things up, the main thing you're going to see is the crimes and things that happen in a town. That's just going to be when you Google a town, you're going to find the worst news, and also the sort of city sort of programs or sponsored things that are media opportunities, but that's two skewed ends of reality of what's going on in that town. So of course there was a horrible police shooting in that town, and then there was like a incident where a woman says the shop owner called her some racial slurs and some other ugliness, and then that was about it. There were a couple feel-good stories on the news that I found, and that was about it. So I found some locals and asked, and his response to me was that I shouldn't worry about race so much, and he has to worry about what neighborhoods he goes to also, even though he's a white man. Yeah, you have to worry about going to a rough neighborhood. I have to worry about a good neighborhood, quote unquote, air quotes around good, but a neighborhood where he would feel safe, and most white and middle class people would feel safe, but no one wants to be the fly in the milk and be the only brown person there, where you may not be welcome, where people are deeply in denial about people of color being driven out of spaces and so oddly enough, that was a couple months ago, and I haven't been watching his videos because he usually just does like a whatever in my life kind of, he does like the same thing every day. I'm not gonna say what it is because it might give him away, but it's basically like a event that happens every day. So he, in one of his videos recently that I actually did take the time to watch, he talks about the thing that he normally covers, and something happened with the weather, and he couldn't do what he normally does. And he talked a little bit about the weather, and then suddenly he went off on a thing about how Democrats are always whining and blah, blah, blah. And, Trump's going to fix things, or he didn't seem like completely Trump, because he said either Trump's going to fix things or someone else is going to fix them or not. And then, whatever. But he still seemed to think things would be fine, and the country needed to get back to normal, and it's been off, so he wasn't straight out saying that he was a red hat, but, he was kind of very anti anything that's been happening before now, right, for the last 4 years that were so horrible, and how horribly off track the country was. Okay. Now that departments are being closed down by a billionaire who calls us the parasite class, while he, as a channel that I watch and adore, Parker's Permaculture, calls him the biggest welfare queen. He calls Elon Musk the biggest welfare queen in America, because he is. And this guy is going on and on about everything that's so terrible in America that needs to change. He didn't really I don't even think he said what it was. But clearly that guy doesn't know where I'm going to feel safe. Doesn't understand what my experiences in the workplace would be as a woman who is, I will say, off-white. Because I am half white, which informs a lot of my experience of assuming the world was for me, until I found out real hardcore it was not. So anyway, this started about Severance, and now I'm just going all over the place, which is on brand. And I just wanted to get off my butt and finally put a video up. Don't even know if I'm doing any of this right. And it's now 20 minutes of me rambling, but at least I'm not just rambling in the ear of a friend. I'm inflicting it on the whole internet. Not even sure if this is going to work. I think I'm recording over what I previously recorded, and what I wanted to do was insert. So one thing I didn't talk about that relates to both Westworld and Severance and politics, to try and wrap it all together, is this sort of two-prong idea of the mind, right? In Westworld, it's the bicameral mind. In Severance, it's the innie and the outie. In real life, it's the work you, and very similar to Severance and the real you, but also the way our minds have been hacked in this two-pronged reality we're living in, where one group of people thinks one thing and they're 100% sure, and the other group thinks the opposite. And while there have always been different parties and mostly had a two-party system, and by the way, a bicameral legislature system, we haven't had this degree of not agreeing on reality. And it's interesting, on top of the fraughtness about work and job loss and changes in the government right now, the mind hacking that's been going on for years, in particular Elon Musk buying Twitter, that contributed to a lot of the misinformation, or just accelerated and I don't want to say enhanced, exacerbated the existing mind hacking that was going on. So I don't know. I think I used to be super smart and write lots of essays, and I want to get back into that in a audio form. So I'm getting my feet wet, but I want to try and tie all these ideas together. And I actually always have been sort of, you could say it's like a thing about being biracial, but also at East Coast, West Coast, I've often felt like not quite a woman, but definitely not a man. You know, I've always been interested in dichotomies and the falseness of dichotomies. And this is masculine, this is feminine, this is male, this is female, this is black, this is white. When I think there's a lot of gray area and the whole spectrums of color in between. And I have felt that way about politics when a lot of people, you know, especially angry right-wing men, are like, oh, you're a liberal, you're this, you're that, and they just have this idea of this thing, and anyone they don't like is in that group. And it's like, no, I criticize the Dems too. I don't like everything they do. It's voting for, you know, unfortunately the lesser of two evils, the way our system's set up, but also the group that you can pressure and work with, as opposed to the group that's not. And, you know, getting more independent candidates in lower level races so that they can then work their way to higher level offices is, you know, what we could and should be doing, instead of only focusing on the top offices. Anyway, but I just love this concept of dichotomy and basically the concept of dichotomy and false dichotomies, and I know what I was going to say, the macro and the micro of different issues. So those are a lot of things that I'll be talking about, but this is certainly plenty long for a videoless video. Anyway, thanks for listening and watching my disembodied voice. Go hug your cats.